I've always been drawn to places abandoned by time, locations that hold secrets within their decaying walls. My name is Ethan Carter, and for as long as I can remember, I've had an insatiable curiosity about the unknown. This fascination led me to explore forgotten buildings, each with its own eerie stories and mysterious pasts. But nothing intrigued me more than the old Briarwood Asylum on the outskirts of town. Briarwood Asylum was built in the early 1900s, intended to be a state-of-the-art facility for the mentally ill. For decades, it stood as a beacon of hope and healing. But something went terribly wrong. In the late 1970s, reports of mistreatment and unexplained phenomena began to surface. Patients and staff spoke of shadowy figures, unsettling noises, and nights filled with inexplicable terror. The final blow came in 1982 when a series of tragic events led to its abrupt closure. Authorities cited financial difficulties and declining patient numbers, but the local community knew there was more to the story. After the asylum closed, it was left to the elements, slowly succumbing to nature's reclaiming force. Vines crept up its facade, windows shattered, and the once orderly grounds became overgrown. Despite its abandonment, Briarwood never lost its hold on the town's imagination. Stories of ghostly apparitions, eerie lights flickering in the darkness, and unexplained sounds kept the asylum shrouded in mystery. My interest peaked when I stumbled upon old newspaper clippings and first-hand accounts from former patients and staff. One story that stood out was about a nurse named Margaret who claimed to see the spirits of patients wandering the halls at night. Another account spoke of a patient named Thomas who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of his restless spirit. These tales fueled my desire to uncover the truth behind Briarwood Asylum. Determined to experience it for myself, I began planning my visit. I knew documenting this exploration would not only satisfy my curiosity, but also provide my audience with a gripping story. Equipped with a camera, a flashlight, and a voice recorder, I felt ready to delve into the heart of Briarwood. The night I chose for my exploration was crisp and clear, the perfect setting to uncover the secrets of the abandoned asylum. As I approached Briarwood, the air grew colder, and an uneasy silence enveloped the area. The towering structure loomed before me, its once grand entrance now obscured by overgrown weeds and debris. The gates were rusted, hanging loosely on their hinges, as if they had been abandoned in a hurry. Taking a deep breath, I stepped closer, the anticipation building with each step. This was the beginning of an experience that would test my courage and unravel the dark history hidden within Briarwood Asylum. The sun was beginning to set as I approached Briarwood Asylum, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly across the overgrown grounds. The sky was painted with hues of orange and purple, a stark contrast to the grim structure that awaited me. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying foliage, a constant reminder of nature's relentless reclaiming of the abandoned building. As I walked closer, the first thing that struck me was the sheer size of the asylum. Its once imposing facade was now marred by cracks and graffiti, remnants of a time when it served its original purpose. The main entrance, a grand archway with intricate stonework, was partially obscured by a cascade of ivy that clung desperately to the walls. Broken windows lined the sides, their glass panes shattered and scattered across the neglected grounds. The perimeter of the building was surrounded by a wrought iron fence, rusted and bent in places as if bent by invisible hands. The gate itself creaked ominously as I pushed it open, the sound echoing through the empty expanse. Each step towards the entrance felt heavier, the anticipation building with every moment. My flashlight cut through the encroaching darkness, revealing more details of the asylum's dilapidated state. Peeling paint, fallen debris, and the remnants of what must have once been meticulously maintained gardens. Reaching the front doors, I hesitated for a moment, taking in the grandeur that had long since faded into decay. The massive wooden doors stood ajar, swaying gently in the evening breeze. Pushing them open, I was greeted by a musty odor, a blend of mold and old paper that filled my nostrils. The interior was cloaked in darkness, save for the faint light filtering in through the broken windows. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped inside, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The main lobby was vast, with a high ceiling supported by ornate columns that were now cracked and crumbling. Dust particles floated in the beam of my flashlight, dancing in the stagnant air. The remnants of a reception desk stood against one wall, its surface scarred by years of neglect. Chairs and tables lay scattered about, covered in a thick layer of dust that whispered stories of hurried departures and abandoned lives. As I ventured further into the building, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The silence was almost tangible, broken only by the distant drip of water and the occasional creak of the old structure settling. My mind raced with thoughts of the stories I had heard, each one more unsettling than the last. I tried to shake off the unease, reminding myself that my heart was playing tricks on me, fueled by the eerie tales surrounding Briarwood Asylum. Navigating through the dimly lit corridors, I couldn't help but feel a presence watching me. It was subtle at first, just a fleeting shadow at the edge of my vision or a distant whisper that vanished when I turned to look. I chalked it up to my imagination, the natural fear that comes with exploring such a foreboding place. Yet, the feeling persisted, growing more intense as I delved deeper into the heart of the asylum. Every doorway I passed seemed to lead to another layer of darkness, each room telling its own silent story. The wallpaper, once vibrant, was now faded and peeling, revealing the bare walls beneath. Broken furniture and personal belongings lay scattered, remnants of lives abruptly interrupted. The deeper I went, the more the building seemed to close in around me, the oppressive weight of its history pressing down on my shoulders. I reached the end of the hallway and paused, taking a moment to collect myself. The stories had prepared me for this, the feeling of being watched, the sense of something lurking just out of sight. But nothing could have fully prepared me for the reality of standing alone in the abandoned Briarwood Asylum, surrounded by echoes of the past and the undeniable presence that seemed to permeate every corner of the building. Taking a deep breath, I pressed forward, determined to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within these walls. As I ventured deeper into Briarwood Asylum, the oppressive silence seemed to grow thicker, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. My flashlight flickered intermittently, casting long, wavering shadows that danced along the walls. The air felt colder here, each breath tinged with the scent of mildew and forgotten memories. Every step I took echoed softly, the sound bouncing off the decaying walls and empty corridors, creating an eerie symphony of solitude. The hallway stretched out before me, lined with closed doors on either side. I decided to explore one of them, curiosity outweighing my mounting apprehension. Pushing the door open, I was greeted by the sight of a long-abandoned patient room. The bed was still in place, its frame creaking slightly as if someone had just left. A thin layer of dust covered the surfaces, undisturbed for years. On the bedside table lay an old, leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with age. Kneeling down, I carefully picked up the diary, wiping away the dust to reveal the name Margaret Harlow embossed on the cover. Intrigued, I began to flip through the fragile pages, reading entries that detailed daily routines, personal thoughts, and increasingly erratic notes about strange occurrences within the asylum. Margaret wrote about unexplained noises, fleeting shadows, and a sense of being constantly watched. Her final entry was particularly chilling, describing a night when the walls seemed to breathe and the whispers became almost intelligible, urging her to leave. As I closed the diary, a cold draft swept through the room, extinguishing my flashlight for a brief moment before it flickered back to life. My heart raced as I glanced around, half expecting to see Margaret herself or the shadows she had written about. Instead, the room remained silent, the only movement the slow swaying of the bed frame. Shaking off the unease, I placed the diary in my backpack, feeling a deeper connection to the asylum's haunted history. Continuing down the corridor, I stumbled upon a small office space. A heavy wooden desk stood in the center, papers scattered across its surface, some torn and others damp with age. Among the debris, I found an old photograph tucked into a drawer. The photo depicted a group of staff and patients, their smiles frozen in time. One face stood out to me, a man with piercing eyes and a solemn expression. Below his name was written Dr. Samuel Reed, a name that resonated with the stories I had read earlier. As I studied the photograph, a distant sound reached my ears, a soft tapping, rhythmic and deliberate. I froze, listening intently as the noise grew louder, seeming to come from the direction of the main hallway. My pulse quickened, and I felt an inexplicable urge to follow the sound. Gripping my flashlight tightly, I moved towards the source, each step measured and cautious. Turning a corner, I entered what appeared to be a common area, the remnants of old furniture scattered haphazardly. The tapping sound was now unmistakable, emanating from the far end of the room. As I approached, the light from my flashlight revealed a dusty piano, its keys yellowed and sticky. The tapping intensified, as if someone or something was playing the instrument. I reached out, hesitating for a moment before pressing a key. The note rang out, echoing through the empty space. Suddenly, the room seemed to come alive. The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. Shadows lengthened and twisted, taking on grotesque shapes that danced around me. The piano began to play on its own, the notes discordant and haunting. I backed away, my mind racing to make sense of the inexplicable phenomena. The whispers I had heard earlier grew louder, intertwining with the music, forming indistinct words that sent chills down my spine. In the midst of the chaos, a vision materialized before me, a figure in a nurse's uniform, her face pale and eyes hollow. She reached out towards me, her expression one of sorrow and desperation. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot by fear. The apparition extended her hand, and I felt a surge of energy, as if the very essence of the asylum was pressing down on me. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, I broke free from the paralysis, stumbling back towards the corridor. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting just enough for me to breathe again. My mind was reeling from the encounter, the lines between reality and the supernatural blurred beyond recognition. I knew I had to press on, driven by a need to uncover the full extent of Briarwood's dark history. As I navigated through the maze-like layout of the asylum, the discoveries continued to pile up. More diaries, personal items, and fragmented records that painted a picture of a place once filled with hope, now consumed by darkness. Each artifact I found seemed to carry a piece of the asylum's soul, whispering tales of pain, loss, and lingering spirits unable to find peace. Reaching a larger hallway, I paused to catch my breath, the weight of the stories I had uncovered pressing heavily on my shoulders. The flickering lights overhead cast erratic patterns on the floor, and the distant sounds of movement hinted at unseen presences watching my every move. Determined to document every moment, I began recording my thoughts, hoping to piece together the true story behind Briarwood Asylum. Little did I know, the deeper I delved into the asylum's past, the more entangled I would become with its restless spirits. The echoes of those who had suffered within these walls were not merely remnants of history. They were active forces, reaching out to anyone who dared to uncover their secrets. As the night wore on, I felt the boundaries between my reality and the asylum's haunted legacy blur, setting the stage for the terrifying encounters yet to come. As midnight approached, the atmosphere within Briarwood Asylum grew increasingly oppressive. My flashlight beam wavered in the dimly lit corridors, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. The weight of the asylum's history pressed down on me, each step forward a battle against the mounting fear that clawed at my mind. I knew I needed to push deeper, to uncover the truth that lay hidden in these forsaken walls, but an unshakable sense of being watched gnawed at my resolve. The temperature had dropped noticeably, my breath visible in the cold air as I moved cautiously through the narrow passageways. Every sound was amplified in the silence. The distant drip of water, the rustle of debris underfoot, and the faint, almost imperceptible whispers that echoed through the halls. It was as if the very building was alive, breathing with the memories of those who had suffered within its confines. I reached a junction where the corridor split into two directions. To the left, the hallway seemed to descend into darkness, the air growing colder and more stagnant. To the right, faint light emanated from a doorway, a small glimmer of hope in the enveloping gloom. Unsure which path to take, I decided to follow the light, reasoning that it might lead to a more significant discovery or at least a temporary reprieve from the suffocating darkness. As I approached the doorway, the light grew brighter, revealing a large, empty room that had once served as a recreation area for patients. Broken chairs and tables lay scattered across the floor, and the remnants of old games and toys hinted at a time when laughter and life once filled the space. My flashlight caught sight of a dusty chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling, its crystals tarnished and dull. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room into near darkness. My heart raced as I spun around, trying to locate the source of the noise, but there was nothing there. The only light now came from the eerie glow of the chandelier, casting unsettling patterns on the walls. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't budge, as if an invisible force held it firmly closed. Panic began to set in, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to find another way out, or at least understand what was happening. My eyes scanned the room, landing on an old, framed photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. It depicted a group of smiling patients and staff, their faces frozen in a moment of apparent happiness. Among them was a woman who seemed familiar, Margaret Harlow, the nurse from the diary I had found earlier. A chill ran down my spine as I stared at the photograph. Suddenly, the room grew colder, and the whispers intensified, swirling around me like a tangible presence. The shadows seemed to move with purpose, elongating and twisting into unnatural shapes. I felt a heavy weight press against my chest, making it difficult to breathe, and an overwhelming sense of sorrow filled the air. Desperate to escape, I turned my attention to the chandelier. There had to be another way out, another exit hidden within the room. As I approached it, the chandelier began to sway gently, though there was no breeze to cause the movement. The crystals tinkled softly, creating a haunting melody that echoed through the space. I reached out to steady it, but my hand passed through the metal as if it were made of smoke. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the room, extinguishing my flashlight and leaving me in near darkness. My heart pounded in my ears as I fumbled to turn it back on, the beam cutting through the blackness just in time to see a figure standing at the far end of the room. It was Margaret, her form translucent and ethereal, her eyes hollow with anguish. She extended a hand towards me, her expression a mixture of sorrow and desperation. "Help us," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the mounting tension. "We can't rest." Before I could respond, the room seemed to close in around me. The walls pulsed with a dark energy, and the whispers became a cacophony of anguished voices. I felt an invisible force pulling me towards Margaret, dragging me deeper into the asylum's dark embrace. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my body refused to obey, rooted to the spot by the overwhelming presence. Summoning every ounce of willpower, I forced myself to break free from the invisible grip. The room erupted in chaos. Shadows danced wildly. The chandelier crashed to the ground, and the temperature soared, burning my skin with an unnatural heat. The oppressive weight lifted abruptly, and the door swung open with a violent crash, allowing me to stumble back into the corridor. Gasping for breath, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my racing heart. The room behind me was now silent, the lingering presence dissipating into the shadows. I knew I couldn't stay in one place for long. The asylum was becoming increasingly hostile, and the spirits within were growing more restless and aggressive. Determined to continue my exploration, I pressed forward, moving away from the recreation room and deeper into the labyrinthine structure. The corridors seemed to shift and change, disorienting me and making it difficult to keep track of my progress. Each step felt heavier, the air thick with the echoes of the past and the unseen forces that sought to keep their secrets hidden. As I navigated the twisting hallways, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, an invisible presence lurking just beyond the reach of my flashlight. The whispers returned, softer this time, but no less unsettling. They seemed to guide me towards a specific location, a destination I couldn't quite comprehend. Finally, I arrived at a large, ornate door that appeared to lead to the central hub of the asylum. The door was adorned with intricate carvings and a heavy brass handle, standing in stark contrast to the surrounding decay. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open, revealing a vast atrium bathed in a faint, otherworldly light. The space was dominated by a grand staircase that spiraled upward, its steps covered in dust and debris. At the center of the atrium stood a statue of an angel, its wings outstretched as if in eternal flight. The angel's eyes seemed to follow me, and I felt a surge of unease as I approached. The whispers swirled around me once more, this time more coherent, forming phrases that sent chills down my spine. "Leave now," they urged. "This place is not safe." Ignoring the warnings, I began to ascend the grand staircase, each step creaking under my weight. The light above seemed to grow brighter, yet the shadows remained pervasive, clinging to the edges of the room. As I reached the top of the stairs, the air thickened, and the temperature dropped again, my breath visible in the frigid air. Before me stood a large, arched window, its glass cracked and dusty. Beyond it, the night sky was clear, the stars twinkling with an eerie brilliance. I approached the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the outside world, but instead, I saw something far more unsettling. Reflections of past events played out within the glass, patients wandering the halls, staff members in heated arguments, and moments of inexplicable terror frozen in time. One scene in particular held my attention, a patient being led away by Dr. Samuel Reed, his face stern and unforgiving. The memory felt vivid, as if I were witnessing it firsthand. A sense of dread washed over me as I realized that these reflections were not mere illusions, but echoes of the asylum's tragic history, replaying endlessly within the window. As I stood there, mesmerized by the haunting display, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The invisible presence that had been following me now manifested more clearly, the air around me thick with an undeniable tension. I turned to leave, but the staircase behind me had vanished, replaced by solid walls that seemed to close in around me. Panic surged through me as I searched for another exit, but the atrium had transformed into a maze of shifting corridors and dead ends. The whispers turned into anguished cries, filling the space with an overwhelming sense of despair. I realized that I was no longer just an observer, but a participant in the asylum's restless legacy, my presence stirring the dormant spirits into a frenzy. Desperate to escape, I focused on the photograph I had found earlier, clutching it tightly in my hand. The image of Margaret Harlow seemed to offer a clue, a connection to the souls trapped within these walls. I began to retrace my steps, navigating the ever-changing layout with a newfound determination. The whispers guided me, their fragmented words forming a path that led me deeper into the heart of Briarwood Asylum. As I moved forward, the oppressive presence intensified, the spirits becoming more tangible and hostile. Shadows coalesced into forms, their eyes burning with sorrow and anger. The temperature fluctuated wildly, hot and cold waves crashing over me in rapid succession. I felt the weight of countless tragedies bearing down on me, each one a testament to the suffering endured within these walls. Finally, I reached a small, secluded room that seemed untouched by the chaos outside. The door was slightly ajar, and a faint light emanated from within. Pushing it open, I found myself in a quiet study, the air still and calm. Books lined the shelves, and a large desk sat in the center of the room, covered in papers and personal items. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil I had just experienced, a moment of peace amidst the storm. I approached the desk, noticing an old, leather-bound journal lying among the clutter. Recognizing it from earlier, I picked it up and began to read, hoping to find answers that would explain the asylum's haunting presence. The entries detailed the daily life of Dr. Samuel Reed, his dedication to his patients, and the growing unrest that plagued the asylum. The final pages spoke of a tragic event, a fire that had consumed part of the building, trapping many inside and leaving the survivors with lasting trauma. As I closed the journal, a sense of clarity washed over me. The spirits were not malevolent out of spite, but were trapped by their unresolved pain and suffering. Understanding this, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I needed to help these restless souls find peace, to give voice to their stories and bring closure to the dark legacy of Briarwood Asylum. With the journal in hand, I made my way back to the atrium, the whispers now softer, more hopeful. The oppressive presence had diminished, replaced by a sense of calm and gratitude. The grand staircase reappeared before me, its steps no longer a barrier, but a pathway towards resolution. I ascended once more, determined to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle and to honor the memories of those who had been lost within these walls. As I reached the top of the stairs, the angel statue seemed to glow with a gentle light, its wings no longer menacing but protective. The reflections in the window had faded, replaced by a serene night sky that stretched out before me. I knew that my journey was far from over, but with each step, I felt closer to unraveling the mysteries of Briarwood Asylum and bringing peace to its haunted legacy. The air in Briarwood Asylum felt different now, charged with an intensity that was both palpable and oppressive. Armed with the journal of Dr. Samuel Reed, I felt a mixture of determination and trepidation. The entries within its pages hinted at unresolved tragedies and lingering spirits, but they also suggested a path toward understanding and possibly healing. As I stood in the serene atrium, the whispers had softened, guiding me toward the next phase of my exploration. Descending the grand staircase, I followed the direction the whispers seemed to indicate, leading me to a hidden wing of the asylum that I had not yet encountered. The corridor here was narrower, the walls adorned with faded murals depicting scenes of hope and despair intertwined. Each step echoed softly, the sound merging with the distant whispers that now felt almost like a chorus of voices urging me onward. At the end of the hallway, a heavy wooden door stood slightly ajar, its surface etched with intricate carvings that told a story of their own. Pushing it open, I entered what appeared to be an old therapy room. The room was meticulously preserved, as if time had momentarily paused here. A large window allowed a sliver of moonlight to penetrate the darkness, casting an ethereal glow on the room's contents. A circular table was positioned in the center, surrounded by chairs that once welcomed patients seeking solace and understanding. On the table lay an array of old photographs and personal items, each one telling a fragment of the asylum's history. As I approached, my flashlight illuminated a particularly striking photograph, a group therapy session led by Dr. Reed himself. The image captured a moment of genuine connection, the patients' faces reflecting a mix of vulnerability and hope. Among them was a young woman whose presence felt hauntingly familiar, Margaret Harlow. A sudden chill swept through the room, and the temperature plummeted. The air grew thick with an unspoken tension, and the shadows seemed to dance with a life of their own. I felt a presence behind me, the unmistakable sensation of someone watching intently. Turning slowly, I faced the center of the room where the circular table stood, now surrounded by ghostly apparitions of past patients and staff. Margaret stepped forward, her translucent form shimmering in the moonlight. Her eyes, once full of compassion, now bore the weight of untold sorrow. "Dr. Reed," she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. "You promised us peace." Before I could respond, the room transformed around me. The walls dissolved into scenes of the asylum's past, revealing the daily lives and struggles of those who had walked its halls. I watched as Dr. Reed interacted with patients, offering words of comfort and understanding. Yet, beneath the surface, there were glimpses of tension and fear. whispers of mistreatment, and unexplained phenomena that plagued the institution. As the visions continued, I noticed a pattern of escalating distress leading up to the tragic fire that had sealed Briarwood's fate. Patients and staff were seen rushing through the corridors, their faces etched with panic as flames consumed parts of the building. The chaos was overwhelming, and the air was thick with smoke and screams that seemed to reverberate through the very fabric of the asylum. Margaret turned to me once more, her expression now one of desperate urgency. "You must help us," she pleaded. "The fire was not an accident. There are truths buried here that need to be uncovered." Determined to uncover the full extent of the asylum's dark history, I began to piece together the fragmented stories from the journal and the visions unfolding before me. Dr. Reed had been a dedicated physician, but beneath his compassionate exterior lay a man tormented by his own demons and the pressures of maintaining the asylum's reputation. The fire, it seemed, was a culmination of unresolved conflicts and hidden secrets that had festered for years. As the realization sank in, the apparitions around me began to fade, the room returning to its original state. Margaret stood before me, her form flickering with a sorrow that was almost unbearable. "You need to find the hidden records," she said softly. "They hold the key to our salvation." Taking a deep breath, I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon my shoulders. The hidden records were likely stored in the Central Archive, a place that had remained untouched since the asylum's closure. With renewed purpose, I set out to locate them, navigating the labyrinthine corridors with the guidance of the whispers that now felt more like gentle nudges than ominous warnings. The Central Archive was a large, secure room at the heart of the asylum, filled with shelves of old documents and files. Dust covered every surface, and the air was thick with the scent of aged paper and ink. Searching through the records, I found ledgers, patient files, and correspondence that painted a grim picture of Briarwood's operations. Among the stacks, I discovered a hidden compartment behind a false wall, revealed by pressing a specific sequence of tiles that matched the patterns in the murals. Inside the compartment was a collection of personal journals and official reports, meticulously organized, yet clearly marked with urgency and distress. The journals belonged to both Dr. Reed and several patients, detailing their experiences and the mounting tensions that led to the tragic events. One particular entry stood out, a detailed account of the days leading up to the fire, including reports of unexplained phenomena and increasing unrest among the patients. As I read through the final entries, it became evident that the fire had been a desperate attempt to cover up the asylum's failings. Dr. Reed had been trying to maintain control amidst growing chaos, but the spirits of the patients, unable to find peace, had become a relentless force within the building. The records also revealed a hidden therapy program that had pushed ethical boundaries, resulting in severe psychological distress for many patients. Realizing the depth of the suffering that had occurred within these walls, I felt a profound sense of empathy for the restless spirits seeking closure. The truth was now clear, and with it came the responsibility to honor their memories and bring their stories to light. As I prepared to leave the archive, the whispers returned, now carrying a tone of gratitude and hope. The oppressive presence that had once dominated the asylum seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of calm and resolution. With the hidden records in hand, I made my way back to the atrium, the atmosphere lighter and the shadows less menacing. The angel statue, once a symbol of unease, now seemed to embody a sense of protection and peace. I knew that my journey was nearing its end, but the final steps would require confronting the lingering spirits and helping them find the closure they so desperately needed. As I ascended the grand staircase once more, the whispers guided me towards the central hub where the remaining spirits awaited. The time had come to face the culmination of Briarwood Asylum's dark legacy, to bridge the gap between the past and the present, and to bring peace to both the restless souls and myself. The central hub of Briarwood Asylum was unlike any other part of the building. The air here was thick with a palpable energy, a mixture of lingering sorrow and newfound hope. As I stood before the angel statue, its wings no longer menacing but rather comforting, I felt a sense of purpose solidify within me. The hidden records I had uncovered revealed the depth of the suffering endured within these walls, and it was now my responsibility to honor those memories and bring their stories to light. Taking a deep breath, I began to speak, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside me. Margaret, Dr. Reed, and all the others who remain here, I hear you. I understand your pain and your need for peace. The whispers around me softened, the once chaotic voices melding into a harmonious chorus that seemed to respond to my words. As I spoke, the atmosphere began to change. The oppressive darkness that had once dominated the asylum started to lift, replaced by a gentle, ethereal light that bathed the room in a serene glow. The spirits that had haunted these halls for so long began to gather around me, their forms becoming more defined and less hostile. There was a sense of gratitude in their presence, a silent acknowledgement that their stories were finally being heard. Margaret stepped forward, her translucent form now radiating a peaceful aura. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying a weight of relief and contentment. "You have given us the closure we sought for so long." Dr. Reed appeared beside her, his expression one of remorse and understanding. "The truths you have uncovered will ensure that our suffering was not in vain. By sharing our stories, you help prevent the darkness from repeating itself." I felt a surge of emotion, a blend of sadness for their suffering and hope for their release. "I will share your stories, ensure that what happened here is never forgotten, and that it serves as a warning to others." The spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the light that now filled the atrium. "Go with peace." Margaret's voice lingered as the last of the apparitions disappeared. The weight that had been pressing down on me throughout the night lifted, replaced by a profound sense of accomplishment and relief. Turning my attention to the grand staircase, I realized that the once daunting path now felt inviting. The oppressive presence that had driven me deeper into fear was gone, leaving behind a sense of calm and resolution. I ascended the stairs with purpose, each step echoing softly as I made my way toward the exit. The corridors of Briarwood Asylum, which had previously felt like a labyrinth designed to trap me, now seemed familiar and navigable. The whispers had ceased, replaced by a comforting silence that spoke of peace restored. As I approached the main entrance, the morning light began to filter through the broken windows, signaling the end of my harrowing night. Pushing open the heavy wooden doors, I stepped out into the crisp morning air. The once overgrown grounds now seemed less foreboding, the vines and debris giving way to a renewed sense of possibility. The sun was rising, casting golden rays that illuminated the asylum in a new light, transforming it from a place of fear to one of remembrance and understanding. As I walked away from Briarwood Asylum, I reflected on the journey I had undertaken. The fear and uncertainty that had driven me to explore these abandoned walls had given way to a deeper understanding of the human spirit and the enduring need for closure and peace. The stories I had uncovered were not just tales of horror, but narratives of resilience, suffering, and the quest for redemption. Back at my home, I began compiling the footage and notes from my exploration. The experience had left an indelible mark on me, and I wanted to ensure that the stories of those who had been lost within Briarwood Asylum were told with the respect and dignity they deserved. As I edited the final touches, I felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that I had played a part in bringing peace to restless souls and shedding light on a dark chapter of history. Publishing the video on my YouTube channel, I watched as the views and comments began to roll in. Viewers expressed their gratitude for sharing such a poignant and chilling story, many moved by the depth of the narrative and the genuine connection I had established with the spirits of Briarwood. The feedback was overwhelming, reinforcing the importance of sharing real-life stories that resonate on both emotional and psychological levels. In the days that followed, I received messages from individuals who had their own experiences with abandoned places and unexplained phenomena. Some sought advice, while others shared their own stories of seeking closure. It was clear that Briarwood Asylum had not only affected me, but had also touched a broader audience, fostering a community of individuals united by a shared fascination with the unknown and a desire to understand the lingering echoes of the past. Despite the eerie encounters and the fear that had once gripped me, I emerged from Briarwood Asylum with a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had taught me the importance of empathy, the power of storytelling, and the enduring human need to seek truth and understanding. As I continued to explore and share real-life horror stories, I carried with me the lessons learned from Briarwood, ensuring that the voices of the past would never be forgotten. The night at Briarwood Asylum had come to an end, but its legacy lived on through the stories I shared and the lives I touched. In helping the restless spirits find peace, I had also found my own path, one that embraced the darkness not as a source of fear, but as a catalyst for connection and enlightenment. As the sun set on that fateful night, I knew that the true horror of Briarwood had been transformed into a story of redemption, a testament to the resilience of both the living and the dead.